everybody. We're back here at Xraised, where knowledge meets inspiration in the intricate dance of industry evolution. I'm Miles, and I'm so glad you're joining us because today we're kicking off season 2 of My AI Law on the show. And yes, it's with none other than Laina Chan herself. Now, if you've been following us from our previous episodes, you already know Laina isn't just ahead of the curve, she's the one drawing it. Award-winning barrister, founder, and CEO of MiAI Law, and recently named most influential CEO in legal tech Sydney, she's been redefining how law and tech can work with each other, not against each other. Her vision is deeply human. She believes that artificial intelligence shouldn't replace judgment, it should rather amplify it. And today, we're not talking about proof anymore, guys. The proof is done. The evidence is in, and we're going beyond that into what happens after you've already been proven right. So let's get into it. Hi, Lena. Welcome back.
Hi, Miles. How are you?
Great. How are you? You've been traveling.
Yeah,
as usual.
I think you've overstated my proof. I've proved it to a small number of people, but now the hard work is to prove it to more people.
Yeah, we're one step ahead, or maybe a lot of steps ahead already. And I love that we're starting this season from a place of reflection after validation, because that's a tough shift, I think, for a lot of founders. So let's begin there. When you realize that my AI loss concept had been proven, or at least to a couple of people or a couple of group of people, that what you'd envision actually works and is now reshaping how people think about legal research, what new burden or maybe freedom came with that validation, Lena?
Okay. I haven't, okay, we've proved it, as you say, to the beta testers, right? They enjoyed using it and they could see a use case, etc. That's only the start of the journey, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
I think we have product market fit, but then the legal profession in Australia is very, very conservative. So in order to get this widely embraced and for people to just learn to trust it and learn to use it, actually, I think they have to learn to use it, because yesterday I was speaking with one of the trial users, and this lawyer had only barely skimmed the top of what you could get my AI law to do. And, I in last season, we talked a lot about empowering lawyers and democratizing justice and empowerment, right? I mean, because this is why I had built this initially for myself, because I wanted to have instant recall, perfect memory. I basically wanted mastery of the law at the speed of thought. I didn't want to be ever left on the back foot. I wanted, even if I was in court or the opponent put an argument or named a case that I hadn't heard of or I hadn't looked at before, that I could quickly ask my AI the question, get it to summarize it or give me a quick summary of it, so that I could never be left wrong-footed. And that's the real purpose, right? Because you can't remember. I can't remember. I mean, some people with savant-like abilities can remember every case they've read and every, the name of every case, but I don't have that ability. And so I wanted that for myself and now for everyone, right? Because the tool has been developed. So I was speaking to a lawyer yesterday, and this lawyer said, but I don't do much litigation, so I don't know if I can have a use for this. Whether I'll do the tool justice, because I don't do that much litigation. And I said, but this is not just for litigation. It's also for all lawyers doing contract drafting, front-end work, contract drafting, putting together deals, etc. You can use the research tool to identify the issues that should be addressed in the agreement that you're drafting, and then you can draft the agreement, put it through our review features, and it will tell you, whether what needs to be tightened up, what needs to be addressed, what clashes you might have, all the mistakes that may be in the agreement that need enhancing. And because this lawyer said, oh, but I guess I can use the summary feature. And I'm like, what do you mean just the summary feature? No, there's a whole contract review and audit feature, etc. But then, this particular lawyer had been very hesitant about asking the AI questions. And I said, just ask it heaps of questions. It doesn't matter. Nobody knows what you're saying to the AI. It's like completely
Ah.
between you and the AI, right? And then she said, but what if I ask the wrong question? There's no such thing as the wrong question. You just, it's a private relationship between you and the AI. And I said, I built it. I built it for lawyers who don't know everything, so that because my AI law does know everything. It knows every principle of law. It knows everything, and you don't know it. You just have to learn to unlock that knowledge that's inside my AI law to help you. And so at the end of it, we decided that what she really needed was more training. So she's having some training today. But that was really interesting to me, because the people who were beta testers were generally barristers,
Uh-huh.
and they were also some people from large law firms. And
Okay.
I hadn't actually, oh, and also a few people from small law firms, but I hadn't had this feedback from them that they were scared to ask the AI questions. And
Interesting.
yeah, I thought that was really interesting, because I kept saying to her, and I'd been saying to her for the last 2 weeks, there's nothing to be scared of. Just ask. And then, you like last week for 2 weeks ago, I had to advise on a new area of law. And it was international succession law. And it was this person had died intestate, had left a massive estate overseas in
Okay.
Europe, and also left a small estate in Australia, and didn't have a will, but was in a de facto relationship. So this is really actually really complicated international succession law, because you have to work out what the law is in Australia, what the law is in Europe, whether, what does Australian law do with the European assets?
Yeah.
The European courts recognize Australian law, like what is the deal, right? And so I never looked at this before. I obviously I know some international law because I do, arbitrations, etc. And obviously I know Australian law, but I had never had to look at this intersection between what happens in Australian law and what happens in European law.
European.
And so I started with a general question, and I just said, A and B are in a relationship. B has died intestate. B has assets in Australia and in Europe. What happens?
Yeah.
And so, I asked it the question. It gave me a report, and then I read the report, and I thought, oh, there's a difference between movable assets and immovable assets. Like movable assets are like
Yeah.
business shares, etc. And immovables are like real estate.
Yeah.
And when I first asked the question, I didn't know that Australia dealt with movable assets and immovable assets differently. I had no idea. So then I asked the next question, and I delved in deeper, and I asked it, how does Australian law deal with this movable assets and immovable assets? And then I asked the question, it gave me the answer, and I read it. And then I asked more questions, right? And then so like I'm just following a chain of inquiry. And so that in the beginning, all I knew was the general problem, and I told my AI the general problem.
Yeah.
And then I delved deeper and deeper. I read the reports, and I delved deeper and deeper and deeper. And of course, then we got a European lawyer involved. And then I also asked a friend of mine who's an expert in succession law to make sure that I was on the right track. And I only checked this with him 2 days ago, and I said, look, this is, this problem, it's all for a friend. It's just not for money. And so this is the problem that has happened. This is what I have decided is the best strategy forward, etc. Is this, you as the succession law expert, is this right? And he said it was, right? And so I said, well, that's I had used my AI law to do all this, right down to the procedure on how you do this, what are the steps you follow, etc. But when I started doing the research, I didn't know the answer at all. I mean, I knew a little bit because unfortunately my father died 10 years ago, and we had to deal with his estate, which had Australian assets and overseas assets. So I knew a little bit roughly what you had to do, but I'd never done one where you were dealing with Australian and European, right? And so I went from having no idea really to, after putting through, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15, 10 research questions.
Uh-huh.
And then also because I'm a lawyer, right? So you do need
Yeah.
to be, so you do need to have a general idea of what it is you need to ask, because that does guide the research. But the
Mm-hmm.
point is that there's no need to be scared. And you
Yeah.
do need to be a lawyer to use this tool, because you need to know roughly how to guide it. But then the tool also guides you, because your first report might come back and it's a bit general, but in
Uh-huh.
there there'll be hints of what issues you'll have to touch upon, and then you have to ask the next follow-up question.
Uh-huh. Like a
So what's the point of
funnel,
that? The point of
getting
that is,
more
yes,
specific.
yes. So the point is that the tool is there, but people need to learn how to use it. So I don't think I have proven to myself and to the beta testers, that
Yeah.
yes, we can really help you, empower you, and it
Mm-hmm.
really helps you with your work, etc. But now I think the journey is to really spread that word to everybody. And so we thought last night, how do we get this message across? Maybe we just have to do a whole series of training videos so people can.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest maybe it would be easier if you have like a portal in your
Yes,
website, having
yes,
that, oh, what if, say, international succession law,
yes,
and what would be the guidelines if I need
yes.
to dig deeper into the
Or give
AI?
examples, right? I mean, give examples. And I think the videos only have to be what, 1 or 2 minutes? One or
Yeah,
two, right? They,
yeah,
they just
I
have
think it
to,
would work.
yes, because then people would have a better idea. And there's really nothing to be scared about, but this lawyer said to me, I spend every day feeling very insecure that I'm going to make a mistake because the clients expect me to know everything. And I go, that's right. That's why I built this,
And
because
that's
to
why
help
you
all
would
of us.
always, and that's why you would always emphasize that critical thinking is highly essential in, using AI platforms or tools like MyAI Law.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well, I
what
think
if,
OpenAI came up with the policy, which is
mm,
not really any different. They released their new terms and conditions on, was it the 27th of October, 29th of October, where they were talking about you can't use their tool to provide legal advice without having any human oversight, which is obviously what you and I have been
yeah.
talking about last season,
Mhm.
because you can't, no AI can be a lawyer,
Yes.
right?
And
And
even
then,
medical, even
no,
medical
totally, any
questions is
profession, you
scary.
can't. So someone made a post of that. He made a post of this on LinkedIn, just sharing the new terms and conditions for OpenAI. And I just
Uh-huh.
made one comment. I just made a comment that no language model can give legal advice, and
Uh-huh.
that everyone, I'm sure, as everyone has tried it for themselves, because
Mm.
anything goes to make sure that the user always gets an answer, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
then my daughter, she always comes up and my daughter goes, no, 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 you're just damaging your own brand because you're saying that no language model can ever give legal advice. But
Yeah.
no language model can ever give legal advice because, well, first of all, my AI is not just a language model, but we're not proposing, we're not saying that we give legal advice. We're saying we're a tool there to help the lawyer give legal advice, right? We will
Yeah.
unearth all the legal issues for you. We will unearth the research for you. We will tell you what the answer is. But there's always more than one pathway to go down. And
Mhm.
it's up to the lawyer to decide which is the best pathway to get the client the solution that they need.
Yeah. And that's why you mentioned before that it's a partner, not a lawyer.
It's not a lawyer,
Yeah.
absolutely
Mhm.
not, right? And
Which
then
is
and then what I found very interesting was that the and I also and obviously some comments were no, this is just protective behavior of OpenAI. I don't think so, because it's not meant to, well, maybe partly it is. I don't really know. But it I think it recognizes the importance and the experience that professionals bring to their job, right? As you say,
yeah,
it's not just lawyers, it's doctors, accountants, everyone. You
right.
can't just
Mhm.
go to a language model who only provides you an answer on the basis of patterns of text
Yeah,
and to say that this constitutes advice. It's very dangerous.
it is. And scary. Yeah. And
It is. But yeah.
what you've laid out is really a unique way to put it or to look at it, having that, as you said earlier, that mastery at the speed of thought, because why not? And how
Mhm.
success right now doesn't necessarily lighten the load, it rather changes it. It's almost like Once your idea becomes real, I think it stops being just yours, Lena. That's why you said, oh, we have to bring it out there. It becomes something you need to protect, guide, and I guess sometimes even defend all over again, but from a
Yes.
different kind of challenge this time, not unlike last season. And that brings me to influence, Lena. When that comes into play, when people start to listen to your work or quote you, build on it, this might sound a little personal, okay? But does that change how you define courage?
I I realize that you have to be really aware of the shadow of your influence. So you also have to, I think, be really careful how you speak to not just the public, but also to your own staff, to your own developers, to everybody, because I think you have to become a better person, and you have to, don't you? I think you have to realize that your words can affect people,
Yes.
and that you have to be really careful how you frame things.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to frame things always to motivate people, but you don't want to crush anybody and you don't want to hurt anybody. But your overall aim is to motivate and guide and grow the company. And that is not just coming from how you deal with the public, but also how you deal with your internal staff. Because my son, who also works for me, is very grumpy a lot of the time. And like ever so often, he,
Is
he
he
tells me
there?
grumpy.
Can
Yeah,
he hear you right now?
I think so. And then every so often he comes and he has an idea for the company, and and then, and then if he thinks I'm not taking it on board, immediately he storms off before I can even say the next sentence. And then I say to the in-house counsel, this is what happens when you have your son working for you. And I have to say to him, come back here right now. I haven't finished talking to you. But the other staff, you can't talk to them like that.
Of course, yeah. That's why they say, oh, you have to learn how to filter yourself somehow. I mean, it's a necessity sometimes in some cases.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's a hard road, isn't it?
I'm sure.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
you've
I
been
think
through a
it
lot,
depends on
Lena.
the. Hmm?
Seeing your journey from the time when, our first chat, I wouldn't forget. I mean, I feel like you've come a long way, a very long way, Lena. And it's really inspiring and it resonates. I mean, all throughout the first season, I would say.
But what I found really interesting was that obviously the venture capital firms are, well, not obviously, surprisingly to me anyway,
Mm-hmm.
they've been approaching me, right? And
Really?
so, yeah, so there's been,
Ah, I think I read about that.
so two big ones, and then two big ones that have, and then actually four in recent memory. One I just wasn't interested in because I didn't see how the partnership would be of any use at all. Two, I'm interested in the very big ones. They're very huge. And of course, they say when you have revenue, we want to invest. When you have revenue, then will you take some money from us? And of course, I also don't want to take money until we've reached 600 subscribers. But then there's another one that's just reached out and wants to meet next week, because next week I'm going to Legal Tech Fund Summit, which is an invite-only summit in Austin, and another investor has reached out and say they want to meet. So it's quite interesting, right? So I was saying to one of the investors I met in Australia, one of Australia's biggest, and he was saying, he was trying to understand whether the other AI companies had a moat, competitive advantage around them, and he said that they were struggling to find one, and I think that's right. There's so many, right? Everyone is being flooded by new legal tech tools
Yeah.
every day. But then afterwards, I gave him a bundle of our materials, etc. And then he came back and he said that he found my journey and what I had done really, what was the word you used? Inspirational. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool when the VC says to you that your company or you are very inspirational.
Well, that they have to check out all the episodes, I guess.
I don't know if he's listened to any. Well, I don't know. I gave them the link, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, now it's about holding your ground on what's right. And as you've said earlier, a lot has changed. I mean, how you deal with not just the beta testers, but also your team, your internal team. And even when the easier path is just commercialize or compromise. I mean, you're gonna take risks soon. That's why maybe you're traveling to Austin because of the venture capital, I don't know,
Well,
proposal.
yeah, because they invited me,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, they did name us even back in July as the top 150 startups in litigation tech, right? But then we were only a half idea. We had a minimum viable product, but we don't have now. Like today, we have full Australian law capabilities
Mm-hmm.
over legislation and case law. And yes, we're going to build more features and and amplify the Australian case law database a bit, but our core features are there. And it's out to the public. We have national firms, international firms trialing our product. We've got, we've only been public, for 2 weeks, but we have all these people trialing and it takes them time to sign up, but the firms as a whole are trialing.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think sometimes you just have to stop. But then ever so often you're like, oh, but have I achieved anything? Have I, am I going too slow? Am I whatever? So I think it really is about you say holding your ground, but it's really about taking stock taking ever so often to see whether you've achieved anything.
Or maybe taking a pause.
Yeah, like taking a pause because
Yeah.
obviously,
Because you
because
don't
sometimes
stop, Lena. Come on.
I know, but don't you think sometimes where you're in the middle of it and you're just right in the middle and you're dealing with problems all the time because all the time I'm fine tuning the code
Mm-hmm.
because my AI is all about not letting the language model rely on its own pre-training. It's not allowed to
Mm-hmm.
do that. And so I'm constantly coding up to plug any gaps, any crevasses that it can slip through because the code has to cover every single scenario that could possibly happen. And you can't think of every single scenario. And so sometimes you haven't thought of it. And then you look at a research report and you go, oh my God, you've done it again. You've slipped through that really little crevasse. I didn't even realize that was there. So I'm constantly plugging these
Yeah.
little gaps. And so it's a constant battle. And so then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you think, have I really achieved anything? Oh my God, have I gotten anywhere? Am I going too slow? Am I whatever? But that's why I like talking to you because it's like a journal. I don't know if anybody else is interested, but this really feels like it's a journal. We've just journaled the whole
Progress,
development
the
of my,
progress.
yes.
Mm-hmm. And following that line of thought, Lena, about influence, when your invention starts influencing others, when people begin to interpret it in their own ways, how do you protect it from being misunderstood or misused, especially in something as nuanced as AI and law?
Well, that's totally what we're struggling with, right?
Yeah.
Totally. Because, like sometimes, actually, it's really interesting. One of the beta testers, back in September was saying, oh, my AI law can't tell me when was the first time this principle of law was ever considered in Australia, or when was the first time this English case was ever applied in Australia. And I
Mhm.
said to him, I said, no, we can't do that. We don't track that information, right? I don't track first time anything happened in any time. And then last week somebody published a paper and it's all over LinkedIn about how a language model can't track time. It cannot tell you in the context of law, whether one case has been overruled or another case has been overruled. It can't do
Okay.
that.
The
And it can't do
sequencing,
that. Hmm?
like the sequence of the
Yes.
cases.
Yeah, it can't do
Mm.
that. Because that's just the language model. It's just been predicting things on the basis of text, right? It's just,
Compiled data.
yeah, it's just predicting what the next likelihood. But obviously, my AI law can do that because this is all coded in, right? It's not,
Uh-huh.
you can't just rely upon a language model to do that. The language model is only one small element of, should be only one small element of any legal tech tool. It cannot be the be all and end all like a lot of people seem to think or
Mhm.
expect it to do. You can't expect the language model to do everything for you. It cannot do those things. It cannot. It can't tell you whether a particular case has been overruled. It can't tell you when the first time anything was ever considered. It can't do that because that's not how, I don't think that's how the language model has been trained. And that's for a professional like me to
Mm-hmm.
come along and I go, well, as a lawyer, I want to know all those things. I want to
Yeah.
know, well, not when the first case was first decided, but you can ask MiAI Law, when was this principle? In what case was this principle applied? And we can find that for you, but we
Mm-hmm.
can't. Maybe you can say between X and Y,
Mm-hmm.
1990 and 2009, which cases considered the application of this principle. We can do that for you. But all this is because it's been coded into the system. It's not doing it. It can't do it simply because we're not doing it by simply relying upon the language model. We only
Okay.
use the language model at the last stage to render the report. We
Mm-hmm.
use it as what linguistic renderer of the final report. And it's doing that based upon a very strict set of rules as to what it can do and what it can't do and what is to do with all the retrieved cases and
Uh-huh.
legislation. It's not allowed to just run free and write whatever it wants to write.
Of
And
course.
my whole battle since May has been to stop it from running amok. And so that
Yeah, I remember you
I
mentioned
have to,
that it's being
yeah.
stubborn.
It's very stubborn
Yeah.
because it's just totally, yeah, it's just totally been trained to always answer, which is so dangerous because it's fine it's answering when there is data and context for it to rely upon to give the answer.
Uh-huh.
The problem appears when there is no context, when there is no data, and so it just makes it up. It always fills in the gaps.
Yeah, it hallucinates.
Language model. This is the general language model, not us, not my
Mhm.
AI law. But it's still an ongoing battle, right? Because I can't predict every single scenario
Mhm.
where there might be a gap in the data. And so, but every
Uh-huh.
time we find there is a gap in the data, or one of our users tells us that the my AI law has overreached, I will look at it, I work out what the problem is, and I code up the answer. And in fact, one of Australia's top commercial barristers said, but this is a real concern, not for my AI law, he says, but for people using AI in defense, for
Yeah.
example, for it to be using to guide weapons, etc., right? Because he says typically all the rail disasters that have happened, the learning always comes from the rail disaster, right?
Right.
Have a disaster happen, you have an inquiry, you work out what the problem is, and then you plug the problem. It's not like you've thought of it before to be able to
Before.
prevent. You can't prevent every single little disaster from happening, but you learn from your disasters.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously for law, when you also have a human in the loop, you're supposed to check. That should be the circuit breaker, right?
Right.
We try to make it as easy as possible for you to check. We can't
Mm-hmm.
guarantee. And so that's the fear. I mean, that's the fear of AI. And it's just worrying that the public, particularly in the context, well, for any profession, right?
Uh-huh.
The
And for any
non
AI tool or platform, I think that's an issue. That's a concern.
but the public wants to be able to rely upon it because
Which is wrong.
someone said yesterday, but the price of justice is so high, which is true. It's true. It's very unfortunate. The cost of justice is very high. And so they want to turn to ChatGPT for advice, but ChatGPT can't give you advice because ChatGPT is just a predictor of the most likely combination of words. It hasn't been taught to reason like a lawyer. It hasn't been taught to
Right. Mm-hmm.
hasn't been given any particular discipline. I mean, what you can even tell, even though the coders, the people who have developed ChatGPT are coders, and yes, you can use ChatGPT to help you vibe code, but I've seen that it will basically give you whatever you want. It
Mm-hmm.
will code it up, but it doesn't necessarily work. And then you look at the code and you go, well, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. That's not the logic sequence you should follow. Why are you doing this, etc. So it really has no idea. It always wants to please you and it will always give you something.
And
And
sometimes
I
just
don't
for the sake
understand.
of giving answers.
Yeah, so I find it very weird when people say that you can just rely on ChatGPT to vibe code and then therefore you're fine and then your code will work. No, it doesn't work.
Well, that
It will not work if you just tell ChatGPT, this is the outcome. Vibe coding is when you say, this is the outcome I want, right? And then just go and prepare the code for me. It doesn't work.
Yeah. And I think relying on machines is just reflects laziness, in my opinion. Because why not think and, yes, it could help us, but not to totally, entirely rely on it. I mean, that's crazy. And, I know you've always pushed for deeper conversations, Lena. I myself know that for sure. And I mean, ones that challenge how we think about law in the age of tech. If you could make the legal community ask a single question about, or next about AI and justice, just one, what would it be?
A single question
One
to ask
question.
next.
Uh-huh.
How can how can AI be used to increase access to justice
Powerful.
and democratize access to justice? Given that we know that the cost of justice and the price of justice is very high, how can AI be used to democratize access to justice so that it is not only the people with deep pockets who can get the best representation?
That's powerful and thoughtful, I guess. And I think that's the kind of question that keeps innovation grounded because it's easy to get, say, lost in efficiency. But what you're really championing is the why or how behind it all, as we would always touch on about purpose, fairness, and most especially humanity. I think that's very thoughtful of you. Well, it leads me perfectly into this. If our previous season, Lena, was all about proving truth or, justifying what we have or what you have at MiAI Law, showing the world that AI in law can work, what is this season really about for you, Lena?
It's about spreading the word, isn't it? It's about showing that something different is possible. Because the existing tools generally use the language models as the main component of their tool.
Yeah.
And we don't do that, right? We of course we have so many layers. We do use language models, AI at every stage, but there's so many stages. And the model is very complex. It's got so many different layers. And we are using AI to help us retrieve cases, retrieve, re-rank until we have what we need to be able to answer the question. But I think this season is about showing people how a tool like ours can actually help increase access to justice. And so that every person is entitled to the best representation. So that we don't have the problems like that lawyer I was mentioning to you, who said that she fears that every day she feels insecure about, does she really know what she is advising? Is she really on top of all the issues that she's advising the client on? Has she really covered every single issue? Has she missed something? We don't want lawyers to feel like that, right? Because MiAI Law does know all the answers. It's all in there for Australian law at the moment anyway, right? It's all in there. So there's no reason why if you're using it, you should not be, if you've done the preparation, you still have to do the preparation, you have to check the answers, etc., that you won't be in a position where you feel wrong-footed before your client, you feel insecure. And so then you are better equipped to service your client, and then your client is getting better service from you. And then so that will lead to generally everyone feeling empowered, the lawyer and the client.
So I think that's beautifully put from proof to your actual purpose which is providing easier access to justice, as you said. And I just noticed that, it's almost poetic how innovation comes full circle. You started with ambition, you prove the concept, and then here we are. The real work begins, making sure it grows the right way. I mean, with your vision, it let's go back to that episode 1. I did, by the way, before we started this. And it's really, I feel proud about it. And I think that's something every leader tuning into us can take away today. Whether you're in tech, law, or business, I got goosebumps. There's a moment where your idea stops being a project and becomes, in this case, a platform with purpose. And from there, the challenge is not just
Yes.
to grow, but also to guide everyone that you could help. I mean, extending what you have. So thank you so much, Lena, for such a
So it's
thoughtful
not
start
about,
to this season.
yeah, that's why I feel a little bit reluctant to take money from anybody, from any venture capital company, because I don't want it to be just about the bottom line. I want it to be more than that. But I think that, in order for me to spread the word, it's probably inevitable that I will have to take some money.
Of course, I
Yeah.
mean, that will keep, it's the fuel.
Maybe along those lines, I was telling the VC we also had plans to set up the MiAI Law Foundation. And he said, why? And I said, well, because helping the disadvantaged has always been really important to my husband and me.
Yeah.
And
And we have an episode about that.
yeah, we do.
Mm-hmm.
So I just can't wait to do that. I can't wait to do that. And, it's not just about money, right? Because, but my partner says, no, 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 revenue is what's most important because it's the measure of success. And I said, of course, because if we don't have revenue, that means we don't have product market fit,
Uh-huh. And
right?
how would you be able to reach your goals?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you need revenue because it proves it's the measure of product market fit.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And if you don't have revenue, that means your message, as you say, is not getting anywhere. You've got it wrong. Then you have to pivot and you have to, um, you know, tweak your product so that it does serve
Yeah.
its purpose.
Yes. Purpose. That's the bottom line. So thank you so much again, Lena. It's always a privilege to have you with us. And I can't wait for what's next in this new series. On to the second episode of season 2. So, for those with us today who want to learn more about MiAI Law or see how Lena and her team are shaping the next frontier of legal intelligence, go check out myai.law. That's miai.law for updates and resources. Thanks everyone for joining us for this first episode of MiAI Law Season 2 on Xraised. If this chat made you rethink what leadership looks like after success, well, that's exactly why we've been bringing Lena over to the show and why we've been asking her the hard questions and a little personal ones. So catch us again in our next episodes. This has been your host, Miles. Stay focused and inspired with Xraised.